Hey everyone. My name is Filipe. I'm an engineer with Udemy, and I'm pretty sure you're all excited to talk about patching just after lunch. It's an awesome subject, right? But I know it's a pain that many companies go through, and Udemy was no different. And I'll be talking mostly about how our journey here to get here was, and some of the lessons we learned. So I watched this SRE in transition talk by Laura Devisin from Datadog. This was probably a couple years ago, and she talks about this concept that startups are dead by default, and you need to move fast, you need to deliver quickly, and that resonated with me. My journey at Udemy was not very different from what she described. And when you're a small startup, all you're focused on is delivery. You need to deliver fast, and changes happening all over the place. Your business is changing, reorgs are happening, and it's really, really hard to keep up with all that. And then you keep, you're doing trade-offs, and you're trying to make sure that future you will not hate past you when it gets to, fix all of that. But the mess will happen, and you need to fix at some point. So fast forward a few years, you realize that you're in this situation where, where do I start, fixing stuff? So you're probably familiar with those problems. Many startups go through some or all of them. But to me, the biggest concern is always the first one, because that leads to burnout. Your team will not be wanting to work if all they do is toil. So you need to find a way to balance that, right? And then at this point on your startup journey, let's say you have an established business, your business knows where you're going, and you now have a product that customers want, but big customers have big asks, and they all require compliance in one way or another, and there is a few compliance frameworks there that you need to adhere to, and that's scary, right? But your team is already stretched. You have all this toil. You don't have time for any extra work, and you need to somehow find time to patch all these systems and to make sure that all this technical debt that you acquired over the years is somehow paid off. And then the first thing that comes to mind is okay, we're a bigger business now. Can we just hire more people? And the answer is usually no. Even though we're a bigger business now and we have established products and all that, the company is still not profitable, or macro is not great, or there's many reasons for why the company will not want to hire more people. And our production engineering was in this situation a few years ago. There was essentially no time to do anything other than just keep churning the job and changing, reprioritizing almost every sprint. So we were at this position. We tried getting more people on board, and it was not possible. So you get stuck in this doom loop of, technical debt, which leads to more no time to automate and more toil, and back to the original part. And we were at this position maybe a couple years ago. This is the cats are not people, they are infrastructure that we had to manage. Just to be clear, if we had that many people, it would be great. But this is not a comprehensive list of everything that we were running up until a couple years ago. And again, it's a team of 7 people for all of that. There is another talk from Lauren from Netflix, Why This Stuff is Hard. I also recommend this one. And he talks about this concept that any system will be pushed to its limits. Even if you had additional capacity, it will get to a point where that capacity will be consumed, and then you don't have extra capacity anymore. And then it's also really, really hard to build capacity, right? So that, again, that's that stage of startup where your business is now established. You know that the company will not just be dead if you don't do whatever the next priority is. And you can think on a longer time frame. Maybe you can plan for 2 or 3 years ahead. But still, the company cannot hire any more people, and we don't have the capacity to make things better. So as a team, we needed to do something different, right? We couldn't keep up with the previous pace that we were working. So we needed to change something. There was something that was not quite right. So we divided, we kind of came up with this strategy of, we should try to minimize the amount of stuff that we run. And within our team, we had to be very picky on the ones that we want to continue running versus the one that we had somehow to stop running or not have to deal with those things anymore, to kind of build up that capacity that the previous slide was talking about. So, and because this year's SREcon is about trade-offs, we had to make many trade-offs here. So the 3 pillars there were, we should pick which core technologies our team wanted to focus on, and really focus on those things, make our team really great at those things, and then sunset what didn't provide much value. So we would have to figure out which systems we could potentially get rid of. And here's where the biggest trade-offs come from, because there's always a legacy on why those systems were there. Over the years, people got used to them being there, and it's really hard to, all of a sudden say, hey, about those systems, we need to get rid of them. And then the third one was, if there's any cloud alternative, like a SaaS solution, we would have to look into those and run using those instead of running ourselves. So this is mostly, getting rid of, instead of having to patch, thousands of EC2 instances, we would just minimize the number of them and simplify the process of patching for us. So this is a few examples of what we did from that list. So on the first column there is the let's say, easy change, which is move things to cloud services. Easy, air quotes, because the first one on the list, binds to Route 53, that was definitely not easy and took years. But some of those were much, much easier, like main cache to Elasticache, that was, and also Elasticsearch to Elasticloud. Those were, pretty straightforward. And then the second one was decommissioning. And how do we pick which systems we don't want to manage anymore? Because, Varnish was there. Is anyone familiar with Varnish? What Varnish cache does? Yeah. So it was, Varnish is essentially a cache that sits somewhere in your network, and it's a HTTP cache. It's pulling resources from your servers, caching locally, and then whenever the next customer comes, it will just serve that. It has a custom VCL, or custom configuration language called VCL, And it was there to save on compute resources on the backends, right? So it's a good thing, right? The idea behind Varnish, when it was enabled years back, was a really good idea. It seemed to be a good idea. You have fast response times to your customers, and then you also offload your servers. Apparently, that's a good thing to have. And we had a bunch of other systems that we were also managing, and we had to make this decision, find alternatives to those systems. And then the third column there is like everything that we cannot decommission and we cannot move to a cloud managed service, or just run in Kubernetes. And the reason for that is we have Kubernetes, the way our Kubernetes cluster is set up now, we have automatically auto-patching on all the nodes, and we still do manual patching on the control plane, but the nodes, they will upgrade themselves automatically. So when we did this analysis, and we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what to do with each of those cats. And then this was kind of how we split like the three main categories of changes there. And then that's obviously not without its challenges, right? One of the biggest challenges was the lack of immediate results, because again, going back to the pizza guy, that was the situation we were in. We were expected to react quickly to what was happening in the business, and you have big customers saying, "Hey, I'm not going to buy your product unless you have this," and it's really hard to get buy-in to say, "Hey, in 1 year we'll be in a better position, then you don't need to worry about any of this." So that was one of the biggest challenges. And then resistance to change is the next one, which is, again, if you go back to the Varnish example, how can you say, "Hey, but isn't caching a good thing? Why are we doing this?" Again, it comes down to pain of managing all those all of those systems and making sure that they are up to date, they are not running end of life software, and all the libraries are up to date and everything. So resistance to change, it's explaining the long-term value of what we were doing. The situation we were in, it was not sustainable for our people. So we had to make some changes there. And the last one was pacing the works, just like OKRs and synchronizing work with other teams that were dependent on us, or we depended on them. That was also calls for a lot of pain and reprioritization, and move this project to the next quarter and so on and so forth. You are familiar with that. And you're probably also familiar with this picture, which is one of probably the biggest technical challenge that we had here was that little block there that's holding everything. We had a few instances of that, and in order to fix this, you need to. It takes time, let's say. So I just have a few examples here. This is what is this? This is This is our Mesos infrastructure. So I had that small block there, which is Mesos, and then Mesos DNS running on it. And then you have name resolution from everywhere going to Mesos DNS into our bind servers. So I have all this confusion of where the DNS request is going to. And interestingly enough, we had services running on Mesos that had fallbacks on the application side. So if you call this service and it times out after half a second or whatever, the application just proceeds and ignores the fact that it times out. But Mesos DNS was the thing that was causing our site to go down a few times, because now Nginx will try to do a name resolution, it will just blow up because Mesos DNS is not there. So Mesos decided to not work anymore. So we had several instances of those kinds of instances. I did some Slack search and I found some of them. Some of them are still in my memory. So that's one of the examples of that small block, the dependency problem. And then Varnish, I had another example here. Varnish was also something that, again, it was supposed to be caching, right? But now someone decided to add an IDS in the middle, and now you have this thing that you can't really undo. So it took a lot of coordination with other teams as well to say, hey, how do we find an alternative to this? It was also, so this Varnish itself was usually not a problem for us. It almost never, or it had its problems, but it was usually when so there was a period of time that we suffered with bot attacks a lot, and that's when Varnish was a little bit painful to manage because the Varnish process will just die or will consume all the memory in the host. And so it took a lot of time in terms of incident response and finding the root cause for instance in production. So our current state, we have only a couple things that we manage. We managed to get rid of almost everything else. Now the team is focused on Kubernetes. Everything runs on Kubernetes or as a cloud managed service, but that means we don't need to patch any of those things manually. Kubernetes, as I said, the nodes will automatically update themselves. We use BottleRocket. We don't need to touch anything to do node upgrades. And yeah, it's just control plane changes that we are currently working on making those upgrades easier and faster. So that's all. That's all I had.